I wanted to come on here and just talk about some news that really broke out and has spread like wildfire across our country. And many people have seen the headline that says the 6% commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtors Association agrees to seismic settlement. Really catching, right? And I appreciate so many of you have reached out asking my takes or what do I think. My dad reached out, called me to make sure I was okay and if everything's going to be okay with my career. And the good news is this was not a complete surprise for those of us that have been realtors. We've had a heads up about this for a while. It's been a long time coming and it's been in the works for a bit. So our company has done a lot of training around this in preparation. The news that broke out on Friday, March 15th, is with regard to the proposed settlement that just needs approval by the judge. So it sounds like this has been agreed to. The judge still has to give final approval. So most likely this is what's going to take effect, but it still needs that final approval. So for those of us who are realtors, we got an email bright and early Friday morning, and it explained the settlement. It explained the reasons why. And I have some thoughts for sure that I would love to share with you. And please feel free to share this video. I think headlines and media, they like to create clickbait. And I'm actually seeing a lot of my colleagues creating clickbait. And I always like to stay away from that, and let's focus on what the reality is. So I'm going to read you a few things from the email I got from the National Association of Realtors with some of the facts. So the Sitzer-Burnett verdict and the copycat cases filed across the country have raised questions about the way real estate professionals do their jobs and how consumers can hire and compensate us. Since the litigation began, we have worked consistently to reach a resolution with the plaintiffs. In the months since the Sitzer-Burnett verdict, we redoubled these efforts. We have always wanted to reduce the significant strain on our members and provide a path forward for the industry. That's why today we announced a proposed settlement agreement that would end litigation of claims brought on behalf of home sellers related to broker commissions. The settlement is subject to court approval. So the highlight to how this all started is sellers felt they didn't have a choice in offering the buyer agent compensation, or it wasn't negotiable. Commissions have always been negotiable. Legally, we cannot price fix as realtors. There's no standard, there's no set commission. My fee is my fee. And I pride myself on being transparent about that. And unfortunately, that's not always the case for my colleagues. So a few bad apples definitely spoiled the bunch, and here we are. So a couple changes in this proposed settlement. One, there's going to be release of liability. So for myself and many other realtors, we would be released from liability from this case. If you're in a real estate company that, produces over $2 billion, this is not releasing them from liability. And so there's some other really big brokerage companies that are still in pending litigation and whatnot. The big one is that compensation offers for buyer's agents will be removed from the MLS. The MLS is the multiple listing service. It was created many years ago to help get better exposure for sellers and collaborate amongst brokerage offices, because there was a time where you had to go office to office to office to find homes for sale. And luckily they said, hey, let's actually communicate, get together, because people are moving more than just locally. And it was a really good thing. And at first the MLS was a paper book that was delivered to every office, and then they converted to online, to digital. And then you have sites like Zillow, Trulia, Redfin that got really smart and said, hey, let's use these, what they're called IDX feeds, pulling from the MLS, and let's use these as ways to collect clients of our own and make money and have realtors that buy in to pick up these clients that were using their information to then have the realtors pay for leads. It's really interesting. But all those sites, any search site that you search for a home, with the exception of for sale by owner, and even some of those are listed on the MLS, the original source is the MLS. They're all pulled from the MLS, which is what realtors, we pay a lot of money to be members to. You have to be a realtor, part of the National Association of Realtor, to be part of your local MLS. And it's a great, great tool. One thing that has always been done is if I were to go show a property to a buyer client, I would pull up the MLS listing and it would display what the offer of compensation was to me as the buyer agent. My fee for my clients, it's always been a certain percentage. And that's something that's in our buyer agreement. And it's never been an issue. The seller has always paid both realtor commissions. And if we think about it this way, the reason for that is the seller, not always, but most of the time, is getting a lump sum of proceeds. So they're not having to write a check right out of their pocket for their closing cost and the realtor fees. They pay it out of the proceeds. And if you want to look at that a couple different ways, the buyer is really the one that's funding the entire transaction. So the buyer is essentially paying everyone, but having the realtor fees come out of the net proceeds takes away from it having to be yet another closing cost for the buyer, because closing costs are always higher for the buyer typically, because if they're financed, they have lender fees, they have other costs. So the realtor commission for their representation has always been paid out through the proceeds. And that way it's not an out-of-pocket expense for the buyer, but they still get due diligence and representation. This proposed settlement, which it sounds like it's probably going to become reality, is they're taking off the offer of compensation on the MLS to buyer agents. So today I could go and show a property and it tells me what is being offered as my fee. Now, most of the time, actually I've always had my full fee covered by that amount that's offered. I've started to see more and more lately that are offering a little less, and then I'm having to have that conversation with my clients that, hey, this is one that they're not offering the full, so you'll either have to make up the difference, or we'll include an addendum with the offer requesting that the seller pay that difference. And this new rule is that it's going to be completely removed from our MLS. So all MLSs around the country will no longer list the buyer agent compensation offered. That means before I show a property, I have to get the listing agent on the phone, which is a feat itself sometimes. And I have to find out, hey, what are you offering for buyer agent compensation? I have to negotiate. If they're not offering my full fee, I've got to do what I can to try and get that full amount, and then go to my clients and explain the situation. And it's a whole nother layer to the process, not to mention it poses ground for discrimination. Who is to say the listing agent's not going to offer a different compensation to A agent versus B agent? This is a problem. In the National Association of Realtors, we fought for many years for fair housing and anti-discrimination and whatnot. This is literally taking a step back in time, in my opinion, and can really put buyers at risk. So right now the sellers have band together and they probably are feeling great, the ones that were in this case. But there's a couple ramifications for buyers that really needs to be talked about. So that's one of the really big changes. And again, there's a lot of reasons why this is actually detrimental to buyers. The other things in here that are included, written agreements for buyer agent agreements. I've always done these. I will be honest, most of my relationships are built on trust and their referrals. So there's times that I haven't gotten those up front, but now it's going to be common practice to get those taken care of right away, which again is a lot for buyers. What if a buyer reaches out to a realtor to see a property and they're not sure if they want to commit to that realtor yet? That is going to put them in a tough spot. And then National Association Realtor is going to pay $418 million over the course of 4 years. It's a lot of money, and it's going to come from us as NAR members. NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing. NAR has long maintained, and we continue to believe, that cooperative compensation and NAR's current policies are good things that benefit buyers and sellers. They promote access to property ownership, particularly for lower and middle income buyers who can have a difficult enough time saving for a down payment. With this settlement, NAR is confident it and its members can still achieve those goals. So more or less, NAR wanted to put this behind us, and I understand that. And I was not there for these discussions, and I have thoughts, and I don't agree with a lot of this. However, what can we control? What can I control, right? So, couple thoughts for those of you wondering how this is going to affect real estate and wondering what's going to change and what am I worried about and all of that. I think there will definitely be good that comes from this. It's going to help bring the professionalism back to our industry. Since the pandemic, which oddly enough, March 15th, I distinctly remember because my birthday is March 14th, and March 15th, 2020, that's when things shut down. So for whatever reason, March 15th is a funny year. And here's the other thing that's interesting is that 2020, the same Super Bowl teams were in the Super Bowl. It was a presidential election, and we had a pandemic. This year, same Biden-Trump running for president, same teams in the Super Bowl, and then March 15th. Why is that? I don't know. Somebody tell me. Maybe it's astrology. I don't know. But a couple thoughts. So something that's really interesting that nobody's really talking about is that buyer realtors used to not be a thing. Did you know that? They used to not exist. So I believe it was, it was before 1990. So 1990, they became a thing. And here's what was happening before 1990 is seller realtors were the only type of realtor. And they listed property for sale, and they couldn't always show the property. So there would be something called sub-agents that they would kind of hire out to show their listings. And there was a study done by the trade, I think it's the Trade Federation. And what they found is that 72% of buyers at that time thought they were getting actual representation by these sub-agents that were showing them the listings. When in reality, those sub-agents still had a duty to represent the seller because they were, directly related to the seller relationship. And their primary goal was to get the seller the best terms, get the best price, and get the deal done for the seller. Really interesting. So the whole buyers beware. Somebody can double check me on this, but I think it actually started with real estate because buyers were getting taken advantage of. They were being misled. They didn't know that they weren't getting full representation when they would go to the listing agent. They thought, hey, they're acting in whoever's best interest that they're representing. No, they were representing the seller. This new change is going to compel a lot of buyers to want to go direct to the listing agent. I would imagine open houses are going to become really popular again because listing agents, if they don't have to pay a percentage to a buyer agent, why would they? Why would they want to? So we're going to have a lot of buyers potentially with no agency representation getting taken advantage of. Guarantee that listing agent is working on behalf of the seller, and guarantee they want to get those unrepresented buyers. Why wouldn't they? And buyers are going to think, oh, I'm getting a better deal, or I'm kind of cutting out the middle person. And it's almost like we're going back in time before 1990. So 1990, they figured out, hey, buyers need their representation. They need the due diligence and the trust that they're going to be taken care of and their best interests are going to be represented. And that's when buyer's agency became a thing. And now looks like we're going back in time. And I got to imagine a lot of listing agents are thinking, hey, I'll hire some agents to show my properties. And it's like we're going back to sub-agency, which is so disadvantageous to buyers. And let's be clear. Consumers have always been able to go unrepresented. Sellers have always had the option to sell for sale by owner. They've always had the option to find a realtor who's going to discount their services and not have to pay the fee that the first realtor they met with is asking them to pay. It's always been consumer choice. It always has been. You have to sign a listing agreement to work with a realtor and a realtor brokerage. You have to sign it and agree. So it's really advantageous for buyers. The other thing that is not being talked about on a wide scale is we have people who have fought for our country, veterans. And the VA program, the Veterans Affairs Loan Program, is an excellent program. And it allows veterans to purchase homes with zero down payment and 100% of their costs covered. Now, with this new regulation, where not all buyer's agents will be compensated by the seller side, and the buyers are going to have to pay their agents, veterans who are using the VA loan legally cannot pay any closing cost. So if they're working with a buyer agent and the buyer's agent's fee is not covered on the selling side, they will not be able to pay their realtor. I had to clear up some storage in my phone. So back to the point, VA buyers won't be able to pay their agent. Until these rules change, which we know how fast federally run programs change, that is shocking. That alone is an issue. That's an issue. The realtor fees have always been paid out of the proceeds. So it's not a check that has to be written at closing. It's paid out of the proceeds of the sale from the funds provided by the buyer and the mortgage company. To make the buyers not have to pay and compensate their buyer agent is an issue, especially for veterans. And let's be real, we earn commissions because it's high risk. There's a lot that I don't talk about, and there's a lot of work that I put in that sometimes may never transpire with a client. And that's okay. I realize it's a bigger picture, it's a long game, but this is how I earn a living. And it's a commission because it's high risk. That is the reason. Many times we do work that we do not get paid for. If I'm running a market analysis for somebody that just wants to know, hey, I'm doing these projects to my home, what do you think? I'm happy to do it, but that doesn't mean I'm getting paid for doing that work. The hope is that they're going to refer me to family and friends that need to buy or sell. And then when they are ready to buy and sell, that I'll be their go-to. And I do have that happen, but there's no guarantee. So the commission, we don't get paid until closing day. The other thing to point out is that the whole headline for 6%, that in itself is so misleading because, again, we do not have standard commission fees. You've always, as consumers, you've always been able to go find somebody that's going to do it for cheaper, do it for less, or do it yourself. And that's not going to change for people. You always have that right. And it's the same, thing with, hey, you don't have to go work with a financial advisor, right? But those industries, like our industries, serve a need and really can help people through the process and saving a lot of headache, because I do this every single day for a living. So just to be clear, personally, I've never charged 6%. And maybe I have sellers that are feeling really good right now because I didn't charge 6%. And maybe some of you want to, retroactively compensate me. I don't know. I would welcome that. Just kidding. You don't have to. But it is interesting. I've never charged 6%. So, and again, you could always go find somebody that's going to charge more or charge less, or not work with a realtor at all. That's always been a choice. So again, it's illegal to price fix. That's always been the case. So it's pretty interesting what all is coming out, and it's definitely going to change our industry. We're probably going to see a lot of realtors. We have 1.5 million realtors, and a realtor is somebody who's part of the National Association of Realtors. There's other people who have their real estate license who are not part of NAR, but they would not have access to the MLS, because in the MLS you have to be a member. To be a member, we have to follow a certain code of ethics and standards that are good for us, and especially consumers and clients. So things are changing. I don't know what all is going to happen, but I do know we've had a lot of realtors enter the business in the last few years because homes were flying off the shelf. There's been a lot of emotions, and it's been a lot to manage to try to just keep it smooth sailing. And I got to imagine we're going to see a lot of agents leave the business. And there's some that's great, but there's a lot that it's really unfortunate. And I'm sticking around. I'm not going anywhere. And I know my worth. I don't work for free. I never have. I know that the work I put in does pay off and will pay off. And I know I'm worth every bit and then some, because I've built a certain knowledge set, a skill set that I'm able to negotiate for my clients and represent them and guide them through the process and make the process a little bit smoother and less drama. And I know I provide value. I know I'm not perfect either, but I provide a lot of value, and I'm worth being compensated. And after all, if I'm not compensated for representing a buyer or a seller, who's going to pay my salary, right? Like, how else am I going to get paid and earn a living? The other thing that I heard recently, because I always wondered, when it comes to a percentage of the sales price, why isn't it a flat fee? Well, one of the big reasons is the percentage allows realtors to actually own and live in the communities where they work. So the money that I earn here doesn't necessarily transfer the same if I lived in a community in California where the average price point is, 1.5 million. So that percentage allows the realtors to actually live, be involved, care about that community that they are living in, because it is a percentage and they're able to earn a decent living. It's a lot of work. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that isn't talked about. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these reality shows glamorize and focus on the commission and how much they're making. But even those are misleading, because every time I see those where it says, oh, this house is, $15 million, here's what the commission is, they're not sharing how much that actual realtor is taking home, what their split is to the brokerage, what they're paying in taxes, and what the ultimate takeaway is. And those that are glamorized on television shows, yes, those are pretty large sums of money, but it's even then misleading, because that's not the takeaway. We pay taxes, we pay a brokerage fee. They probably have splits. They're probably paying something for getting those leads if the brokerage is providing them. So it's not all it's made out to be, and we'll see what's going to transpire. But at the end of the day, just know I'm not going anywhere, and there's going to be some good that will come from this. There will be some challenges that come from this, but it's all going to be okay. And ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some pretty serious pushback from buyers when they realize how disadvantaged they are with all these new things taking place, because they're really going to be the ones. It's like we're going back in time, and they're going to be at risk of not being properly represented, to being taken advantage of. And I thought we've come past that, but we'll just have to see. If you have questions, I'm here to talk. Give me a call, reach out. But I wanted to give you my take on things and share a few thoughts. Hope that's helpful. And as always, if I can ever be of any help to you or someone you care about, buying or selling, I'm never too busy to take great care of them. And I would be honored to do just that. Take care.